What's up? Coach Austin here. Today I want to talk about nutrition, some common questions I get, and I'm going to offer those common answers. But sometimes they're not that common. So one of the first things I get is, how do I lose this belly fat? How do I lose this tricep fat? How do I get my ass less fat? Or something along those lines. I'd say after marrying an ex-NPC girl and working with bodybuilders and people in the gym who want to achieve weight loss, I'd say this, keep in mind before we get into it, this is applicable for most people. There are exceptions to every single rule. And the first rule is going to be reduce your sugar intake. The average American consumes anywhere from like 120 to 150 grams of sugar per day. Well, you want to try to get that below 30 grams of sugar a day. That is including fruit. So a lot of the times people will not even have that much fruit. They're going to have a Coca-Cola or Sprite or their cookies or their ice cream, and one serving can have anywhere from 40 to 60 grams just in one serving. So they have 2 times their recommended daily amount just in one serving. If you look on the back of the label, for example, here's my Pierre thing here, and if you look there, it will say sugars 0 grams right there, 0 grams. But if we look over here, it says percent of daily value. Well, the reason it doesn't have a percent of daily value next to sugar is because the food lobbyists have lobbied the people who make the laws and made it not a requirement to put on the percentage of sugar daily value. Not that there isn't one, it's just that the amount of sugar isn't on there because basically the food manufacturers don't want people to pick up a soda or a Snickers bar and be like, oh wow, this is 300% of my recommended daily value of sugar. Because what would people do in that case? They'd probably put it away. But me and you are smarter than that, so we know that 30 grams approximately is going to be the recommended daily value. Now, if you're burning 4,000 calories a day, then it's going to be closer to 60 grams. Not that no sugar at all is going to be best, because if you're a high caliber athlete, or you're trying to get through a hard effort at work, whether you're doing construction or landscaping or that sort of thing, you want to be able to fully utilize sugar. So if 30 grams is our recommended max daily amount that we should intake, that doesn't mean we should have 30 grams all in one sitting. Let's say we put in a hard effort, maybe we're doing some gardening or whatever, and we have our 30 grams that we allocated for our treat. Well, if we were to drink that 30 grams right then and there, we're probably going to utilize probably anywhere from 5 to 12 grams of that sugar and create energy from it, in the form of glycogen that's stored in our muscles and in our liver. But you want to make sure that the timing is proper. So you don't want to have all those 30 grams all at one time, because that creates what we call spillover. And spillover is just, a layman term for extra sugar that is turned almost instantly into fat. So next, we want to make sure that when we're trying to achieve our goals, that we reduce the amount of processed foods that we're consuming. We could talk about, processed wheats and, gluten and that sort of thing. People get very sensitive about this, especially people that aren't super educated on the subject. They start making fun of people who are gluten intolerant. But really where this trend started to originate is because almost every processed food now has a ton of gluten in it. And what ends up happening is we are overdosed with gluten, and people who have what they call celiac disease, what ends up happening is their gut or their intestine is inflamed by this gluten. And so what ends up happening is the food that they do consume, it basically in the GI tract where you absorb the nutrients, if that's inflamed from the gluten scratching the inside of the intestines, you're not able to absorb a lot of the nutrients. So, like when you're at dinner and you're eating bread before your nutritious dinner, ask yourself, is that a good idea? Even though you may not have celiac disease or be quote unquote gluten intolerant, if you're overdosing on gluten, to some degree, you're going to be inflaming the inside of your GI tract, and you're not going to be able to intake as much nutrients from the food. Now, I'm going to get a lot of pushback on that, but my experience shows me that reduction in gluten helps people lose weight. Also, people need to understand what the macros are. People talk about macros this, macros that. Well, what is macro? Water, protein, fats, and carbohydrates. And people are on this low carbohydrate diet. Well, guess what? Fruits and veggies are carbohydrates. So when they say they're on no carbs and then they're eating veggies, they're actually eating some carbs. Now, the slow carbs and the fibers can help slow down the digestive process. And fats, you want to try to reduce the amount of saturated fats. Yes, coconut oil is a saturated fat, but that is an exception because it has other characteristics that are good for you as well. Proteins as well are very important, but a lot of times people don't know that they can actually get enough protein from vegetables, and veggies have protein in there, and your body will actually crave animal proteins, but that doesn't mean that you need animal proteins to get enough protein. What else do I get a lot? Oh, yeah, fasting. Fasting is something that's super popular. Fasting's been around for thousands of years. Something called Ramadan, and if you're Islamic, you know all about it. But a lot of the health fads or the diet trends are about creating a deficit. And part of the reasons people who are on these programs are successful if they stick to the plan is because they're in a deficit. And part of creating that deficit is just not eating for anywhere from a 12 to a 16-hour period. Your body is actually meant to adapt to a fasting period. So, right off the bat, I know a ton of professional athletes and successful people that don't even work out that much but have very lean bodies that do fast regularly. So fasting can be integrated. I wouldn't recommend it every day. I love to fast, every few days, or I'm starting to feel a little chunky. I'll skip my breakfast, have a black coffee. Obviously, I probably didn't eat while I was sleeping, so I'll wake up and that'll probably be anywhere from 8 to 10 hours of sleep. And yes, sleeping will actually help increase your resting metabolic rate, and you actually burn a lot of calories when you sleep as well. And people who don't sleep enough are more susceptible to gaining weight as well. But back to the fasting. You can go throughout your day, and you're going to feel hungry and your stomach almost shrinks. And so when you do end up eventually eating, your stomach is going to get full a lot quicker because it almost shrunk. Two other tips that I give my athletes a lot is that never ever go to the store hungry. If you go to the store hungry, a lot of times you're going to open up that bag of chips, you're going to drink that soda in the store, you're going to rush through the store, you're going to make bad decisions. My experience shows me 10 out of 10 times if you go to the grocery store hungry, you're going to buy shit. So don't do that. When you get home, when you open up the fridge, everything at eye level is what you're most likely to grab and consume. So what you need to do is grab your fruits and veggies and put that at eye level. So when you open up your fridge aimlessly, you have all that stuff right there that's available for you to grab and eat, whether that's carrots, bell pepper, hummus, apples, bananas, you name it. Lastly, variety. People think that they need to, break it down in the simplest thing: rice, asparagus, and chicken breast, which, is carbs and protein. But what about the unsaturated fats? Maybe they'll put some olive oil on there, avocado, or have a handful of nuts or whatever. But then they have that day after day after day. And if you were to look at that person's blood work, you're going to notice that there's a lot of different micronutrients, right? We have macronutrients and micronutrients, which are essential for living. And there's a lot that tend to go down, and that's what ends up causing you to lose the sustainability of the diet, is because your body craves these micronutrients, and your brain doesn't know exactly what micronutrients it needs unless you're an experienced person that has a lot of experience dieting. You might be like, oh, I crave this or I crave that, because you've trained your body or your brain to know where to get that nutrient as far as what type of food. But variety is really important. Besides, if you're trying to gain weight, you're going to be in a surplus. If you're in a deficit, obviously you're trying to lose weight. But making sure that there's variety, and then making sure you have a well-balanced carbs, fats, proteins, and water. You want to do your fasting, and that's normal and healthy. You want to make sure that you reduce sugar. So hopefully some of that information was useful for you. Till next time, later.